James Gunn is facing massive backlash over a shocking change to a character after the release of his Superman movie, and fans aren't really holding back. You see, as you all know, James Gunn took Superman and turned the story into his own version by making, Jor-El look like a villain. Fans called out James Gunn for disrespecting the legacy of Superman as well as ignoring what the character has always stood for. Now, even when pushed, James Gunn doubled down and dismissed the criticism instead of just simply respecting the audience that actually cares about Superman. And now with the digital release, James Gunn is quietly changing scenes, okay, proving that he knew from the start that his handling of Superman was, well, at least this particular character of Jor-El was a mistake. So this is coming from Comic Book News, where it talks about James Gunn backtracks on Jor-El and Superman digital release. Okay, so basically, fans immediately connected this to a larger problem, where Superman's origin is no longer about inspiration or family, but about tearing down heritage. Now, the message it sent into actually intentionally or not was that immigrant families are evil. Asian audiences picked up on this insult directly, and at Comic-Con, international fans actually voiced their anger, saying that it felt like, James Gunn was spitting on the very core of Superman's mythology. Okay, so it's actually showing that, the cultural disconnect Gunn created by rewriting Jor-El into something that he was never meant to be. It wasn't a minor cultural complaint either, but the film is, when your film is already struggling, why would you alienate the people that you're actually trying to win over? Okay. Now, the anger didn't stop with Comic-Con. You see, when the Superman digital release hit, the outrage started all over again. This time, eagle-eyed viewers actually noticed, something strange and stuff. But suddenly, the movie hinted that maybe Jor-El wasn't really evil. Now, the new digital cut suggested that Lex Luthor had actually doctored the image itself to go ahead and frame Superman's family as villains, shown here on cosmicbook.com. Now, Daily Planet headline exposed that Luthor had manipulated the footage. This wasn't in the theatrical cut, though, which means James Gunn went back and quietly changed one of the most hated elements of his Superman movie. Now, that alone is telling and stuff, okay? But if Gunn really believed in his choices, well, he wouldn't be changing them after release. But now James Gunn is simply rewriting Superman post-release in real time, okay? Or it's probably rumor that he is. You see, he's trying to patch the damage that he already caused, but instead of just sticking by his bold choice, he folded under pressure, basically. Now, that doesn't necessarily show strength. It actually shows a bit of weakness. And when the head of a studio actually panics after fans reject the scene, the project was built on shaky ground from the start. Now, it's not about, artistic vision anymore. It's about survival at this point. And speaking of weakness, well, Gunn's response to fans was even worse than the scene itself. You see, when he was called out on Jor-El, James Gunn told fans they were ish out of luck. And that's not the attitude of a director or a studio head who respects the people keeping the lights on, okay? That right there is simply arrogance. That's Hollywood elitism on full display. Now, imagine telling fans, the very people who pay for the tickets, that they don't matter and stuff. But for Superman of all properties, that particular arrogance becomes poison. Now, the character is supposed to represent hope and not contempt. All right. And honestly, the failure of Gunn's Superman wasn't just a domestic, problem. It was global. You see, international markets flat out just rejected the movie. Asian audiences despised the kaiju sequence and Jor-El's portrayal. And in those regions, family ties actually means something sacred, okay? And James Gunn stomped on it, basically. And instead of just respecting cultural values as well, it seemed like he simply mocked them. Now, it's no surprise that Superman actually bombed overseas. Gunn actually forgot that Superman isn't just an American icon, he's a global one. Okay. Now, you can't strip you can't strip away the universal appeal and expect people to go ahead and cheer. Now, even Comic Con, usually a haven for overhyped fandom energy, couldn't save Gunn's Superman either. You see, panel reactions were muted. Nobody defended the Jor-El decision. Nobody applauded the arrogant interviews either, but instead, DCU head James Gunn got quiet pushback from people who didn't want to outright boo the project, but also couldn't take excitement. Okay, so that particular silence actually spoke louder than any applause could, especially for a franchise like Superman. Silence is death, and if fans aren't rallying behind the movie, well, the franchise has no pulse. Now, what we're seeing is Gunn backtracking on his own movie by real time. Now, by slipping in the Lex Luthor doctored message explanation, well, James Gunn is rewriting Superman's story midstream. Now, that's not really creative freedom right there. That's not what it seems to me. That's just desperation, it looks like. And he realized that he couldn't hold the line on making Jor-El a villain. So he changed it on digital release. And that means fans were right from the beginning, where Gunn knew that he actually screwed up and is now scrambling to go ahead and fix it. In doing so, he admits he doesn't have a clear vision for the hero Superman, okay? But honestly, the bigger issue here is trust. How do you trust a director or a studio head like James Gunn when he simply keeps shifting the narrative? Now, one day he tells fans that they're out of luck. The next day he slips in an edit that changes Superman's father back into a sympathetic figure. Now, that right there doesn't look like leadership to me. Looks like a man who has no confidence in his own storytelling. Fans notice, they see the contradictions, and once you lose trust with Superman fans, well, it's almost impossible to go ahead and win it back. All right. So what makes this even more insulting is that Gunn tried to go ahead and hide the particular change. Now, there was no official announcement about fixing Jor-El. It took fans digging into the digital release to even catch it. Now, that simply right there proves that James Gunn knows his Superman decision was indefensible. And instead of just owning up to it, well, he just quietly swept it under the rug. And that right there is cowardice. If you're going to go ahead and rewrite Superman's father as a villain, well, stand by it. If you regret it, admit it. But James Gunn did neither of those things. He just hoped no one would notice. Now, the arrogance right there from Gunn is actually part of a bigger Hollywood problem. You see, studios think that they can gaslight fans into accepting anything. Change the cut, deny the backlash, mock the audience. But Superman is bigger than Hollywood's spin. You see, fans know the character. They know, the mythology, and you can't fool them by simply just quietly editing scenes. Now, Superman means too much to too many people, and James Gunn found out the hard way that when you actually mess with Superman's legacy, people will actually push back. Now, even mainstream Hollywood defenders couldn't even save him. You see, Kevin Smith, a man who has built his career on praising every comic book project, and he also created the Masters Universe Netflix, admitted that Jor-El decision was terrible, and that's when you know that you failed. If James Gunn can't even get Smith to clap along, it's over. Superman deserves better than, cheap gimmicks, and the fact that, Hollywood voices were forced to go ahead and admit that Gunn blew it shows how bad the situation really is. Now, it's not just fans saying this, it's also the insiders. But the fallout is already clear. Superman's international box office tanked. The film left audiences confused, insulted, and angry. And instead of just simply revitalizing the franchise, James Gunn made it radioactive. Now, what should have been a triumphant relaunch of one of the greatest heroes ever turned into another cautionary tale of Hollywood arrogance. Now, Superman is supposed to inspire generations, but under Gunn, he alienated them. And that's why this movie is already a stain on DC's record. And here's the truth. If Gunn thinks that he could fix Superman through post-edit release edits, well, he's wrong. You see, fans don't forget. They know what he did with Jor-El. They remember the interviews, and they also remember the arrogance. But quietly patching a scene in the digital release doesn't really erase the insult. It just proves that James Gunn doesn't really stand by his work, okay? Now, Superman deserves a leader who actually respects the mythology, not someone who rewrites it whenever the backlash gets too loud, okay? So, in the end, this simply just proves that Gunn is in over his head. Running DC and directing Superman at the same time was always too much. The cracks are showing, and instead of just bold leadership, James Gunn gave us arrogance, panic, and sloppy rewrites, okay? So, yeah, Superman basically deserves better. The fans deserve better. And if Gunn can't handle the responsibility, well, then it's time to go ahead and hand Superman to someone who actually respects the character and the audience that has carried him for generations and stuff as well. So let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Be sure to smash the like button, share the video far wide across social media. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell for future uploads notifications, and I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, peace.